until you're trying to find out what is your lane and where are you most in flow as a business. And I honestly feel like now, Tom, where we're at, and we're as close to that as we've ever been, in flow and in our lane, and our marketing mix, the people who are in the business, our brand, how we act day to day, it just feels more in flow than we've ever been. And I think as a result of that, organically, we're doing great commercially as well.
Hello and welcome to Confessions of a B2B Entrepreneur. I am your host, Tom Hunt, and today we have a very interesting episode. We have Gavin Howarth, who is the managing director and owner of Howarth, which is a law firm based in England that does HR law stuff. But the super interesting part about this story is the fact that the business was passed down from Gavin's dad to him, and he now runs the company and owns it with a couple of the longtime employees. And the thing that I think Howarth do really well is the whole ethos and reason for existing behind the brand that then bleeds into everything they do. And we talk more about that towards the second half of the interview. And I think it's a really big insight for any entrepreneur building a business, is to really understand that and use that to build your culture, to build your brand, etc. So let's jump into that after we've thanked Fame, who are the sponsor of this show. They produce this podcast, so shout out. If you want a show like this, you can go to fame.so, request a proposal, tell them that Tom Hunt sent you, and I'll make sure they look after you, right? Let's jump into this episode with Gavin right now. Gavin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Been a long time coming. I should have had you on probably a while back because I've been following the Howarths journey ever since I think I probably saw either your dad's post or a post that you did on LinkedIn.
That's got to be the one where I took a picture of my dad picking up rubbish in the car park.
How many likes did that get?
About 67,000.
It's absolutely crazy. We'll link to it below in the show notes, but for people listening, the point, actually, I'll let you explain the post instead of me.
It took me by surprise, Tom, because it's quite funny actually, because I came into work one morning, Dad's here first, and he's always here first. So that's not out of the ordinary, but he likes to be the first in, and that work ethic. I got into the car park. It was the day after a bank holiday, and he's picking up rubbish in the car park in his suit, just clearing up. So I took a picture of him and put a little message just saying, "Oh, here's my dad. First in after a bank holiday, picking rubbish up in the car park. What a legend," basically. I think that was roughly the theme. And put it online thinking nothing of it, and then it just exploded. And what was funny is Dad was getting messages from people on LinkedIn from all over the world, even some women saying, "Oh, we should go out for lunch."
Wow.
So there you go, Dad. I mean, he's happily married. Him and Mum are together, been together for 40 odd years. But yeah, it was a bit of a crazy experience, really. About 5.4 million views.
I think the picking up the litter first, being the first person there after a bank holiday, says so much about great leadership in like one picture on one LinkedIn post. I think maybe that's one of the reasons why it popped off.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you're nearly getting to those levels now.
No, not those kind of levels, not your levels, Gavin. Anyway, so for people listening, Gavin is, I believe, the managing director and owner of Howarths, who are a law firm that do HR stuff, I believe.
That's right.
I think it's been a bit of a journey because the business has obviously passed from your parents to yourself and the team. So we're going to dig into that and understand like the entrepreneurial journey throughout that. But my first question is, I want to understand like the early days. And you actually didn't train at, or like your first job at a school wasn't at Howarths, it was somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Was there a reason for not coming straight to Howarths?
Well, the way it worked for us, Tom, is, long story short, my dad is from a one-parent council house in Leeds. Didn't have loads of opportunities when he was younger. So joined the police at 19, retired at 49. Had a great career in the police, enjoyed it, but done his 30 years. In the last 4 years of his police career, he got his A-levels, because he didn't have any, and then did a part-time law degree on a Tuesday and Thursday night. Retired at 49 and then set up Howarths at 50. So he roped my mum in to help him because I hope he doesn't mind me saying numbers are not particularly his forte. So mum joined him and they set off from the front room at home in Clackeaton, where the business is based. But what's most remarkable about it, I mean, that entry into the market is great in itself, but mum and dad had never been in business before, had zero contacts. They didn't come from a legal firm and bring clients with them. They didn't know anyone. It was a computer, a phone, let's set off, give it a go. So they did an incredible job, just remarkable job. And starting a business at 50 as well is a feat within itself. So fast forward, the business starts in 2003. I went to university in 2004. So as you know, starting a business, at that stage, you don't know what's going to happen. Will it survive? Is it going to become viable? All that good stuff. So mum and dad sort of carry on their journey. I go away to do my law degree and go down the path of qualifying as a solicitor. And as I go on that path, the conversations with mum and dad start, and little conversations about, is it a possibility? The business has survived another year. So could it happen? And then, everything aligns later on. So it was kind of incremental and natural that I would go forge my own path for at least a little bit. And then if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Let's just see what happens.
So then you join in 2010. It says on here on LinkedIn, employment law advisor and director. What were you doing in, say, the first 3 years? Were you doing any entrepreneur stuff, or were you doing like law stuff?
Law stuff, in summary. Yeah, so I joined learning. I was advising. I qualified as a solicitor, so I was advising a lot of businesses on employment law and learning the ropes in that bit as well. As time went on, I did start to do a little bit, because I think back then we didn't have a website. So I said to Dad, we could do with a website. So I then start to build a website. I remember actually having one of the images on the website was a lion. You wouldn't do it now, really. But it was a picture of a lion, to give this image of what we might like to be. So there was little bits of business input, but not a lot, Tom. No, I was learning and listening and doing the employment law work.
So your dad and mum must have been doing something right to get to the stage 5 years in or so when they can employ you and other people. What do you think it was about them that enabled them to do it?
I think it's a lot of what we have now, which is authenticity and plain English. So one thing that works for my dad is it'd have been the Yellow Pages then, I think, go through the Yellow Pages, ring businesses, rent a room down the street, put on a seminar, say, does anyone want to come and learn about employment law? He would then talk about it, and there might be 20 people in the room, 6 will have a conversation, 2 or 3 might eventually turn into clients, and then go again. So my dad, sure you'll get a chance to meet him at some point, but he's a great storyteller, he's a great personality. So I think it was authenticity. I think it was, I can work with you. It was the businesses sat there thinking, this is in a complex area. It can be stressful. Of course, it's stressful as well when you're dealing with people and employment law. I could work with that person. And built from there, like client by client.
So funny that marketing just doesn't really change. Like getting people onto a webinar or a seminar in this case, adding value, and then a small number of them may come and work with you in the future. So good. And so he was cold calling people for the Yellow Pages to get them to advertise the seminar, I guess.
Yeah, and I think like leaflets. And they'd go around, mum and dad would go around business parks, put leaflets in, end up chatting to a few people while they're there. It was just the graft and the grit in the early days of making it happen, getting up off the seat, trying to go speak to people, generate interest, put on an event like you say. Not complicated, but you have to put the graft in.
And so when I asked you about how they succeeded and you were like, it's because of partially how we are today, I think this comes into the culture question that I wanted to ask. From the outside and from talking to you, it seems like you guys have a pretty like healthy, awesome culture. One example I can give is you have another business partner now who I think has been with you for like 10 or 15 years. And I think she is now an owner of the company as well. And so like retaining that kind of talent, what do you guys like proactively do to try and build this culture, if anything? Because maybe it's just the way people behave in Howarths.
I think it's a bit of both, Tom. I think as people and as a family, that's how we are. But then I would also say, so the person you mentioned is called Tracy. So Tracy is our finance director and a 20% shareholder. Tracy joined the business when she was 17, I think she was. So she would have been one of the first employees of the business and young at the time, been with us ever since. But Tracy is, as well as being extremely savvy in business and finances. She's also HR qualified. So HR sits on our board effectively. So whilst I trained as an employment lawyer, Tracy is HR qualified. So HR sits at the very top of the business. So I think a combination of the family values, who we are as people, then combined with the people expertise at board level have helped us then create a great culture for people who work here. And so a combination of the two, I think.
In terms of the board, it's yourself, Tracy, and I think both your parents. And is there anybody else as well?
No, so actually it's not both parents. So me and mum didn't actually overlap for very long. I hope that wasn't because of me, but no, mum's not been in the business now for 14 years, although she does support with the Howarth Foundation, which is our charity. But dad, yes, sort of honorary chair, me, Tracy, and Charlotte is our legal and compliance director, 5% shareholder, sits on the board, and Charlotte's joined the year after me. So Charlotte's been 13 years. So we followed as a team because Tracy 17 years, I've been here 14 years, Charlotte 13 years, and we essentially make up the operational board.
Did your dad and mum retain any ownership or get passed to you?
It all got passed to me and then a little bit Tracy, and Charlotte actually came after. Yeah, so it was sort of a full buyout, if you like.
So let's talk about that transition. I'd love to know like the moment when your parents were like, we want to give this to you, when that was and how they did it.
Okay, good question. So right back in the early days, I think there would always have been an idea, a hope, a dream that one day we might achieve family succession. Not very, very early days, because I think the truth of that is it's survival. It's let's just survive till next year. So, but once you get past a little bit past that phase, then I think as a family, because we're very close as a family as well, as a family, the hope and dream would perhaps be that would family succession work one day? But there's a massive difference between having a dream and that becoming a reality. And then, so that's the foundation from which we start. And then as each year passes, so the first 3 years I'm doing employment law advisory work and doing a tiny little bit of business, but I'm ambitious, Tom. I then became MD 3 years after being here, and I'd have probably been knocking on my dad's door for 6 months before that. So I become MD, and I remember the first year I became MD, we had a good year. So at this age, I'm now 27.
That's pretty crazy, right? Like 3 years into joining a business and you had 2 years experience training before.
Yeah.
You're basically running the company. That's managing director, right?
Yeah. We were a lot smaller than we are now though. So yeah, but so I was 27, we had a good first year. And maybe as you do in your 20s, or I'll speak for myself, me in my 20s, after that one good year, I'm knocking on dad's door then saying, come on then dad, I'm ready to buy out. Like I've proved myself now. Look at me go. I've done 1 year. We've done a great year. Let's get cracking with the next step. Whoa, calm down. So I think it was clear what my hopes and intentions were early. But of course, you've got to prove yourself. And every year that passes then into my early 30s is, yes, I didn't know what I was doing. I've got a lot to learn. But then as the time passes on, it becomes more and more a possibility. But as you know, there's two sides to each deal. So whilst ever it might be something that I want, of course, it's got to be right for mum and dad. So I think incrementally, year by year, it became a more real idea. And the idea settled in a little bit more of, yeah, that actually could be a possibility. And do we want to be in the business forever? Could we see us passing it on? These things take time. And I think they don't have to take time. Of course, many deals can happen very quickly. But for us, I think there were two parts to this. There was the legal deal is one thing, getting the solicitors, doing the share purchase agreement, all that good stuff that every deal goes through. But I think when it's family, and particularly for us, when you're very close, and I've got kids, mum and dad are grandparents, and there's an emotional contract as well. And the emotional contract takes time because you want it to be right for everyone. You know, I didn't want to like shortchange mum and dad. I didn't want to make them feel like they were pushed out. They had to be 100% happy with it. Similarly, they don't want me to overpay. They don't want to pass a business on and then I end up off work stressed for 6 months because it's too much for me. There's a lot of each party thinking about each other. And that takes time to make sure everyone's emotionally right and ready, because the last thing we all wanted was to do a deal and then 6 months later, anyone be sat at home on a night thinking, wish I had done that. Or I regret X, Y, Z, which we didn't have because I think from the very first conversation to when we actually got the deal done, you're probably talking about 5-6 years in reality. And in between that, Dad got cancer and was very ill. So I had 2 children in that time as well. And in fact, Dad got diagnosed with cancer and the very day after my son arrived. So anyway, we had to navigate all that as well. So, and the number one priority being, we'll never fall out about it. And I've said it online and I said it to Mum and Dad lots during it was, I'd rather walk away than fall out. But thankfully that never had to happen.
But you know that they were, and maybe I'm joking a little bit here, but they were like watching your performance like a hawk for those first 3 years. Like, is our son going to be able to take this on?
No, that's not even a joke. 100%. Like, don't want to speak on behalf of Dad, but if I were to guess what I'd say about that is he would not sell the business to me unless he thought I was 100% ready. And not even 100%, maybe because I'm his son, call it 150%. It often can be harder because you don't want anyone thinking that it's a given or there's that type of stuff. So no, 100%, my dad would not have sold the business one bit. I had to be ready, and I had to be ready in his mind in accordance with his standards. Like, otherwise it wouldn't have happened. And also, like, let's speak commercially. If Mum and Dad are going to sell me the business, they need to be sure commercially that they're going to get a good payout and they're going to get paid properly and it's actually going to be worthwhile.
And in terms of the structure of that deal, presumably you agreed on an amount and then would pay out from profits over time.
Correct.
And how are we doing with paying it out?
Yeah, good. All on track.
Great to hear.
Yeah.
One of my other questions was about reinvesting profits. So I assume a chunk is going to the buyout, but is there anything that you're working on internally that you're like funneling profits into doing?
Well, because our strategy is long-term as a business, we're not here one day, gone the next. We've been 21 years now, and there's longevity in the business and longevity in the relationships and partnerships. And because of that longevity, we've always had a mentality of reinvesting in the business year on year. So are there any specific things that the profit goes into? Well, everything almost, because we make money and put it almost straight back into the business because we are ambitious as well and we want to grow and we want to see where we can get to with this business. So a lot of the revenue that we make is invested back into the business because we're continually growing, developing, evolving, improving. But I mean, like any service business, like the majority of our costs are in staff, but we want to work with the best people. So we're always reinvesting.
Makes total sense. Let's talk about your day-to-day now and how much time you're spending like doing the lawyer stuff versus the business stuff now.
I don't do any lawyer stuff now. There's far better lawyers in Howarths than me now, so thankfully. So there might be an odd occasion where an older client, for some reason, older in terms of how long they've been with us, an older client will ring me, but it's very rare nowadays. And being honest, my employment law knowledge gets rustier by the year because I'm not on the coalface. So I actually don't do that. So I run the business, Tom, really. So I see my role very much as waving the flag for Howarths, telling the story, promoting the brand, creating partnerships, being the cohesion for the team, strategic direction, of course, all that good stuff. But outwardly facing, telling the story to the business. Although I've been in a moment recently, I'd say over the last 8-12 weeks, which has required me to face inwards a little bit more because we're rebuilding. When we're bringing team members in and we're making some sort of significant recruits at the moment, then you're back in the business, as you will know. But so my role's evolved a lot over the last 14 years and I'm happy for it and I want it to. But there's a vulnerability to it, and you'll know this personally. There's a vulnerability to it because your role changes, you're doing different things. In certain areas, perhaps you're not needed as much. In fact, you maybe start to get in the way a little, but I'm happy for that. And I want that. I don't mind that at all because number one thing here is what is right for the business. And I'm sure it's the same for you.
It's such a great story to be able to tell. Like your origin story is just absolutely epic. I wasn't aware that your dad started it at 50. That's incredible. And yeah, it totally resonates. Like, I think I'm getting to this point now. The team are probably just like, Tom, you're really not adding any value anymore. So can like play with something else. So that makes total sense. So right now you're focusing with, but previously it was like forming partnerships, I guess coming on podcasts like this, dealing with some clients that they called you, but you were essentially Was part of your responsibility to bring in new clients, or did you have other people on the team doing that as well?
No, actually, so I do a lot of that at the moment. I do that, and I do like doing it as well. So yes, I still do that, still bring in business. So that's a decent part of my role. But I see, and I think whilst ever personally, I like doing that and I want to do that. And I think it's important as well. And I think many MDs and CEOs have business development, sales element to them. I'll continue to do that, but also for other people to support that as well, which happens now, but even more so in the future. But whilst ever I enjoy doing it, and I think it's a natural part of building relationships and building partnerships and referral networks and all that good stuff. It kind of happens organically, which suits us well and how I want it to be.
Yeah, I can't imagine how us like running a load of Facebook ad, like direct response Facebook ads, right? It doesn't really align with the brand image or the ethos.
No, exactly right. But you go down all these tracks though, don't you? And it takes a while to, without going too deep, I think it takes a while to find out who you are and who you want to be. And sometimes the simplest questions are the hardest to answer. And who are you? Who do you want to be? And we've certainly been on, and you do over time and in business, I'm sure Fame have done the same, where other people are doing this. So maybe we should do a little bit of that. And it doesn't necessarily work like that in your mind, but subconsciously you start doing a little bit of that, go down that path. So yes, Facebook ads, cold calling, whatever it might be. Every path is tried, exhibitions, sponsorship, whatever it might be. Until you're trying to find out what is your lane and where are you most in flow as a business. And I honestly feel like now, Tom, where we're at, and we're as close to that as we've ever been, in flow and in our lane, and our marketing mix, the people who are in the business, our brand, how we act day to day, it just feels more in flow than we've ever been. And I think as a result of that, organically, we're doing great commercially as well.
That is the gold there. That's like the nugget of wisdom, I think, is the biggest like takeaway from this. Like really understanding who you are. And then that bleeds not just into your culture, but it bleeds into like what marketing strategies you're going to use. And I think you're right. It seems like Howarth know that probably more than most businesses. A couple more questions on you. So would you say you're extroverted?
No, if I'm being honest, which I don't know if sounds a contradiction, but no, I don't feel like that. I look at my son, who's very like me, and dad actually, in a way, obviously, as the family line. But no, I feel I like my own time. I read a lot. I can be shy. I just think I've adapted. I just think I'm hopefully self-aware and I've adapted. And, I've had personality profiling, which is very enlightening, I feel. Gives you an indication as to what type of person you like. But no, I'd say introverted, but I've learned to be extroverted. I've learned to speak on stages. I've learned to speak in podcasts. I've learned to do the hard things in business. But I don't like, for example, difficult conversations, hard conversations. I don't like doing them. I don't enjoy it at all. And I can get very nervous beforehand still, even though for 14 years I've had so many of them now. But you adapt. You learn to adapt for the role. But I think fundamentally, deep down, you probably don't change. You just learn to adapt, and I'm sure you've been the same.
Which parts of the role at the moment or in the past year have you felt like, A, that you're really good at, and B, that other people tell you you're good at, and also that you like enjoy a lot?
This sounds a complete paradox from my last answer saying, yes, I'm introvert, but telling the story with people in particular, I think with people, influencing, persuading, working with people, all that good stuff, really. Like we have an office, we work in the office, we're hybrid, so around the business, but I personally don't like working at home. I like being around people as well. So I don't know, introverted in some senses, but I do like being around people as well. So yeah, I think the storytelling, Tom, being around people, I think the optimism, the positivity, the vision, the mission, like where we're going, I think people hopefully feel enthused around me about where Howarths is going and what we're trying to do.
And that's perfect. The activities for a CEO, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, that has been, I think there's a lot to learn about how to run a business from you guys. I don't know. I see a lot of people maybe start companies, but there's no like depth or like meaning. And I'm trying to build that fame. It seems like, I'm pretty confident you guys have definitely done that. And so that's, I think, the key takeaway. Now, we're also going to link to howarths-uk.com, which is the site if you need any HR employment law help. We'll link to your LinkedIn, and we'll link to that LinkedIn post with the 70,000 likes. Anything else we should mention or link to?
Thank you for that. The only other thing that I've got into the world of, which is very relevant here, is a podcast. So, yes, the Gavin Howarth podcast. I've released 5 episodes, I think, but I've got about 8 or 9 recorded. They're about 50 minutes long, and they're not really to do with business. I don't actually know what they're all about yet, but I've had some great conversations with some great people about life, about finding yourself, and a journey back home in a lot of ways without sounding too cheesy or deep. But a bit like I talked about with Howarth, about who are you, who do you want to be, who were you when you were young, before you were socialized, before you followed social norms, before you embarked upon the journey of who should I be. Lots of good conversations around those type of themes with high-level people. So that's the essence of the podcast.
But we are also going to link to that below. Gavin, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Not at all. Thanks for having me, Tom.
All right, what do we think about that, team? That was a big insight for me, where the key or quite an advanced concept is to try and understand at the core of the business, who is the business and why does it exist? And then once you have that, some other decisions are probably going to be easier, like what are the values going to be? What marketing channels should we use? And that's a super big insight for me. And I think could be super useful for pretty much every B2B or non-B2B entrepreneur at that. So thank you, Gavin, for coming on. Thanks to Fame.so for sponsoring and producing this show. And thanks to you for listening.